see after loops is look at or after for loops is to look at the loop type called the while loop, and I'm gonna make sure that I get it correctly here. The while loop. So the concept of the while loop within Python, how can we take advantage of that? How is it different from a for loop, and what does the syntax look like? That's what we're going to look at in the while loop. So for the for loop, we saw that very straightforward. For x in a particular range, go ahead and print the value. How is that different from a while loop? I would argue it's very similar. It's very similar, but instead of a for, we're using a while statement. So let's just go and say define a particular variable here, and let's call that variable count. All right, so we're gonna be counting. So I want to say keep counting until you've reached a certain number. So I could say keep counting until you've reached 5, until you've reached 10. All right, and this is what this is gonna help us do. So let's say x equals 0 while actually count equals 0 while count, all right, is less than 15, for example. So we're gonna go ahead and print let's go ahead and print count. So we're gonna go ahead and print that value, but we can't just stop there, right? Because then how does count change? So we can now say count equals to count. All right, so we go ahead and increment the value of count, or this will always add in more than we want, so we can say count equals count plus 1. All right, so if we run this, let's see the result, and then we're gonna talk through it. So it started and said 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 14, and then when it reaches the point where count is greater than 15, it doesn't print, because this is what the while condition is telling us. So count equals 0. So let's kind of break down the syntax and make sure that we understand what's going on. While count is less than 15, so if that value, we start from 0, is 0 less than 15? Yes, 0 is less than 15, so go ahead and print 0. Now we increment, so 0 plus 1 is what? 1. Now we go back to our while statement and say, all right, 1 is 1 less than 15? Yes, go ahead and print 1. Now we increment 2. Now we go back again, right? So it's gonna keep doing whatever we have in the while statement until that condition is broken. So by the time we reach 14 and we print 14, now we're gonna go ahead and look at 15 and say count equals 15. Is 15 less than that? Nope. Then so the count, the while condition is not met, and then it stops printing, and that's why we can print only to 14. So while conditions, for loops, very powerful within programming, right? Using this in combination, guys, you can do a lot of things. You can do a lot of things within programming. But let's go more and look at some other scenarios of while statements, and we'll do this by actually writing a simple while condition that can check for, say, all the even and odd numbers within a particular range. If I say, okay, go ahead, write a computer program that you can check for all the even numbers within the range and tell me if that number is even, it should tell me. If the number is odd, it should tell me. All right, so that's what we're gonna do to really put into play this idea of the while loop. So how can we do that? We can start with count. Simple again, we don't need to change that, or we can maybe change this to, say, number. All right, since we're working with the numbers, so number equals 0. All right, now if our range is say 100, actually let's use 20 so that we don't go too much. All right, and then now we're saying if that number, while that number is still less than 20, what are we trying to do? We're trying to check. Let me cancel everything. We're trying to check if the number is an even number, tell us. If the number is an odd number, tell us, right? So when we reach 2 is an even number, it's gonna print 2 is even. When we get to 3, no, 3 is odd, tells us 3 is odd, and then 5 odd, 6 evens, and that's how this program is going to work. So if we proceed to this, Since we know a number, now the question is we need to check. But guys, we remember we did understand how to do if statements. So we want to check to say if number, all right, meets a certain condition, all right, and let's just put a placeholder here so we can see how the code is gonna come into play. All right, the syntax is not correct, but I'll fill it in just so we see how we build it up. So if number meets a certain condition, all right, now what do we want to do? A condition that tells us that it's even, we want to print to say, all right, string, let's take string, convert that to a string. Let's add a plus there, bear with me, is an even number. All right, so that ends that. Now, if it's not that case, what do we want to do? And I'm just keeping this simple. We want to do an elif. All right, let's just play, because there's just two numbers in math, right? Even and odd. Unless somebody has invented something new, I feel like our else statement, let me not do elif, our else statement should be pretty safe. All right, and at this point we want to print number converted to string is an odd number. All right, so this should give us a very simple program that can go ahead and check if, now we need to figure out that condition, but let's assume that there's some condition that we can use here. If that condition is true, we want to print it's an even number. If the condition is false, we want to print it's an odd number. But we cannot end here. From the previous exercise, we saw that we have to increment our number. All right, so now we gotta say number equals number plus equals 1, right? So we increment that by 1, and that's how we're gonna keep going back and coming back and looping until that condition isn't met. Now, how can we figure out if the number is even or odd? If you remember in the previous lectures where we worked with numbers, there was a mathematical function or a mathematical operator that was, let me explain it down here. You know, that was, if I say 5, all right, mod, so if I say 5 mod 2, for example, what is this? This will be equals to 1, right? All right, now if I say 6 mod 2, this is equals to what? 0. All right, if I say, you see where I'm going with this? If I say 7 mod 2, this is equals to what? 1. If I say 8 mod 2, basically the remainder, so 8 divided by 2 is what? 4. Remainder, nothing. There's nothing that remains, right? So this will be 0. And if you keep going, what you'll notice is you're seeing zeros and 1. Zeros, 1, zeros, 1. All right, so this one that is a 1, what is that? This is what? Odd number. This is an even number. All right, and it kind of keeps going back and forth. So if we do the number mod 2, if the number is 1, then we're dealing with an odd number. If it's 0, then we're dealing with an even number. All right, and this is what we can now use as a check within our function. So let me go ahead and delete that. So now we can come in here and fill in the details and say if number mod 2 equals 0, all right, there's no remainder, then we know that's an even number. Otherwise, else, it means that there is a remainder, and that has to be an odd number. All right, and so that has to be an odd number, so we can go ahead and print that as an odd number. And then once we've printed that out, bear with me, I have an additional bracket here. So now once we printed that out, and if you run this, let's make this look pretty so we can run it again one more time, and then you have it. All right, it can tell us 0 is an even number, 1, we really shouldn't start from 0, but we can start from 0. 1 is odd number, 2 is even, 3 is odd, 4 is even, 5 is odd, 6 is even, 7 is odd, and you can go ahead and see that. All right, guys, so this is the power of while conditions coming together with if statement, if else conditions, which we saw in our previous modules of conditionals, and being able to, given any number, tell us if that number is even or odd. All right, guys, so very, very powerful. You can take this and take that all the way to 20,000, and the code now in Python, it ran in a very short time, and it can tell you. Imagine having to do this by hand with a calculator, guys. That would be mission impossible. But with Python and the power of if statements, guys, you can figure this out to 20,000 or 2 million with a very simple script. All right, basic but very, very powerful concept. Now this takes us into a next concept which we're going